Bethesda is hard at work on Elder Scrolls 6, but given the community's understandably disappointed reaction with Starfield's release, and now with the Starfield DLC being released, what exactly can we expect from Elder Scrolls 6? Well, for one, we know that the release date is definitely not going to be until, at minimum, 2026, and that's if you're the most optimistic person ever. Games these days seem to be taking longer and longer to actually come out. You never hear about a game coming out early, you always hear about it coming out delayed. Everyone's got to keep in mind that Starfield wasn't even released until September 2023. The crazy part is even some of those devs that you think, oh yeah, no, they're all working on Elder Scrolls 6 now. No, in fact, some of them were working on the DLC for Starfield, and that only released in September of 2024. Then we recently had that weird Elder Scrolls game that released onto Android. Now, with that being said, Xbox did actually shut down some of the Bethesda studios, which essentially weren't performing well. Now, to be fair, some of those people were transferred to other studios, so it's not necessarily all bad there, but something to keep in mind. There's also a few other things that we 100% know about Elder Scrolls 6, which a lot of people don't talk about. One of them is that Microsoft is fully against using Unreal Engine. Essentially, they want to develop their own game engines rather than rely on other companies. In fact, the gameplay that I'm showing you right now is from Elder Scrolls Online. It isn't even Skyrim because, to be honest, even if you're using mods, it doesn't look anywhere near this good. If there is such a graphical thing as next gen, which I guess Unreal Engine 5 is to be fair, if I'm being totally honest, Starfield doesn't even compete. Honestly, older RPG game titles like Mass Effect Andromeda or Witcher 3, they look way better than Starfield does. It's not even close. There's a few other things we know. Definitely this game is going to be set obviously within Tamriel, and more specifically, we do believe it's going to be in Hammerfell and or Highrock. There's essentially been hints that it's going to be arguably even both. And on screen now you'll actually be seeing some of those teasers. Now you may be wondering what exactly are these two continents and why may it be both? Well, Hammerfell is basically like a sandy desert kind of Parisian aesthetic, and I can't see an Elder Scrolls game that's meant to be, beautiful and all that, gonna be just, a lot of sand. So I think that, to me at least, Highrock is pretty much guaranteed in my head, because that is a lot more of a traditional landscape which you can work with. It's kind of, it's based on Brittany, if you know what that is, basically medieval France. That kind of aesthetic is what they're going for, with kings and queens that are feuding within different areas of Highrock. Now there was actually a quest in Skyrim which had a Daedric prince essentially talk about how there'd been a plague that had affected a bunch of Breton villages, which essentially only exist within Highrock. And of course keep in context that there'd previously been a massive plague in the Second Era which wiped out a lot of Highrock. You can kind of see how, just like plagues of the past, it leaves power vacuums, it does lead to instability. And so I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if Elder Scrolls 6 does follow the events of a massive plague. Now touching on timelines very quickly, I do want to say Elder Scrolls Online, of course, yes, is in the Second Era, then a lot of the Bethesda games are set within the Third Era, and then Skyrim is in the Fourth Era. This is primarily for both freedom and continuity reasons within the story. It basically means they can set up whatever story premises they want without being bound too much to the past, except for things that they've already mentioned, like the plague issue that we do know is going on in the Fifth Era in Highrock right now. But again, if they go Sixth Era, maybe they don't even have to worry about that, to be fair. Another notable thing to mention here is that Todd Howard in 2022 did basically in an interview with, I think, Lex, he basically said that he's expecting Elder Scrolls 6 to have a similar lifespan than Skyrim, and because Todd knows he's probably not going to come back to Elder Scrolls 6 perhaps ever, because at that point he'll be 70 or something by the time he, maybe creates the next Fallout or whatever, maybe even does something else that isn't Elder Scrolls after that. Point is, this is kind of for him a legacy piece, I think, more so than anything else, and so he's going to want to have the room for the game to expand over time in terms of, yes, DLC, and of course mods as well. And of course with time constraints and stuff, it is a lot easier to use WoW Generation. We've seen that with Starfield, of course, they were being arguably a little bit lazy there, but I can't expect them going entirely back to not using WoW Generation, although to be fair they have always said that they've used it at least somewhat, just in Starfield a lot more than they usually would, and they've developed that tech a lot more, and I just don't see them going back in that. So yeah, Highrock and Hammerfell together, I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see both. Now may also be a good time to mention, by the way, this game's been in pre-production for 4 years, and now with it being in production for a year, maybe pushing up a bit into a year and a half, the full time in which we've been waiting for Elder Scrolls 6 now is 6 years. The release date of Skyrim was 2011, so that means you could have had a kid in 2011 and then be playing the game with your child and actually not even be a child anymore, to be honest. If this game somehow pushes into 2027, which I think it might, it'll be 16 years between games. That's insane. It's been that much time in between Elder Scrolls games. People are still looking forward to it. Everyone, and potentially their mother, may be interested in playing Elder Scrolls at this point. It's crazy. Okay, next thing I want to touch on here is the quality of Elder Scrolls 6 and how high quality it needs to be, and how, with Fallout 76, arguably Bethesda has been on, pretty much at this point, coming up to a 10-year bad track of games. Fallout 4 was, I would say, kind of mid, to be honest, and at the time I felt that way and I still do now. It's not that the game's bad, I'm not a hater, but to be honest, if I look at Fallout London, made by an amateur dev team as their first game, to be honest, I would argue it's kind of in many ways better than Fallout 4. And that's absolutely wild, but arguably, to be honest, some of the voice acting is more interesting within Fallout London. The stories sometimes are actually more interesting than Fallout 4. Likewise, the companions sometimes are actually even better than Fallout 4. And the point that I'm trying to make simply is the core of what makes a good RPG. Some parts Bethesda's really good at, that being obviously exploration. Even in Starfield, even though there wasn't much there was a lot of it. Same with Fallout 76, they still had that. But a lot of the other parts that make a good RPG game that, say, for example, I would see within the Mass Effect franchise as an example, I've honestly, over the last 10 years, kind of not seen that much within Bethesda, and I'm hoping with Elder Scrolls 6 that we see a return to form. Ideally, to be honest, we see a game even better than Skyrim, because that's what, with a more mature development studio, more innovation within the industry, with Bethesda having more studios to draw inspiration from, whether that again is Mass Effect, Witcher, Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk, and there's some others you can make an argument for too, but the point is, I can't put Bethesda and their recent titles on the same level as Witcher, as Cyberpunk, as the Mass Effect trilogy. Obviously not Andromeda, but you get the point. To be honest, Bethesda should be at that level now. That's what we should be expecting, in a similar way that we expect that from CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk coming out, right? We held them to that same kind of high standard, and Bethesda should be no exception. The last thing I quickly want to touch on here is leaks. We don't have any credible leaks that have come out other than like some slides that basically were released in 2020 that talked about a potential release date, and I think there's some in 2022 as well, but that's all we have, no like concrete information. Even from like very popular YouTube videos, and of course, yes, clickbait articles too, on Twitter, whatever, you've seen a lot of people talk about like, oh, there's a 4chan post, bro. And I'm just sitting here like, are these people insane? Anyone can just post anything on there, and 99 times out of 100, perhaps even larger than that, is complete rubbish. There's nothing in the leak that's even slightly, to be honest, that's surprising. I'm not going to even cover it because it's boring and things that I could just write out myself and post and then be like, oh look, there's a leak that now I can talk about on my YouTube channel, bro. It's ridiculous. I have no doubt that someone that just wanted to get some clickbait views on a website probably created that leak. And it's a shame that, you know, people really want information so much that some people are like, oh, maybe it's true. No, it isn't. There's very little chance. Okay, now with all that being said, there was a lot of really good leaks in the last year leading up to Starfield, and I wouldn't be surprised, because there's so many different studios working on Elder Scrolls 6, if we don't see a similar amount of leaks come out in that last year. With Starfield, it was largely just like assets and like random pictures of like ships and stuff that we got, and like a few breadcrumbs of information, but definitely like it was way more than you would get with some other games, to be honest. So look, if those employees are still there, I don't see anything changing. I strongly suspect that we're going to see a similar amount of leaks during that last year of Elder Scrolls 6. So there's always that to look forward to, but again, that probably won't be until at least 2026 until we even start to see leaks. So until then, I wouldn't give anything too much credence. Two last things I quickly want to touch on. First off, usually it does take Bethesda like 5 years to make a new game, sometimes 4. And if you are to project that forward, again, maybe even 2028 could be as late as we're going to get the game. Despite Elder Scrolls probably earning up to even £1 billion if they do a good job, there's only a few hundred people working at Bethesda Game Studios under Todd Howard. And within that, actually funny enough, we even saw Todd himself even months after Starfield was released, saying there's a bunch of people still working on Starfield. So we really probably haven't reached full production until honestly this year, which is absolutely insane to think with the amount of money on the line here, but that's how Bethesda rolls. Also, I want to make it very clear this game is coming to Nintendo and is definitely coming to Sony. They own probably like 70% of the market between them, and then Xbox on the console space is like 30%. Microsoft isn't going to say no, 70% of my customer base, we're not going to want your money. Obviously they got PC too, a lot of people do, but yeah, like they're not going to say no to that money. More than likely the Xbox exclusive will be like, you can access the game 7 days early, 2 weeks early. Xbox has been doing that a lot more recently. I don't see it on Steam much, but yeah, Xbox exclusive for Xbox Game Pass. You'll probably have to get the ultimate version of the Xbox Game Pass, which is like 15 quid a month or something crazy. But look, at the end of the day, if that's what people want to spend their money on, good for them, go for it. By the way, on Discord we have like pretty much daily events playing many different co-op games together. We got lots of people on voice every single night, so if you want to come join us, it's basically like a little cozy clan. You're more than welcome to check that out. Leave your thoughts, feelings and opinions in the comment section, we'd love to hear them. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'm out, GG, bye bye.